Have we been conditioned to look at our flaws through a paralyzing lens of fear? In this episode of Unspoken Chronicles, we dismantle the universal matrix of sin and look at the hidden mechanics that traditional religion left out. From the repeating cycles of ancient mythology to the illusion of absolute perfectionism, this is a raw, unvarnished look at how suppressing our dark basements echoes into physical pain, and how the ancient art of shadow work, soul retrieval, holds the literal key to permanent liberation. If you are ready to stop running from your past, calculate your internal awareness, and generate your true spiritual currency, this session is for you. Have you noticed how all the stories we hear across the globe share a strikingly similar plot? Horus matches Jesus, Isis matches Mary, Yahweh matches Zeus, and so on. One realization that became blindingly obvious to me is that we are all talking about the exact same thing. In ancient Egypt, we called it Isis, Osiris, and Horus. In Christianity, we call it the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Greeks, the Romans, and countless other civilizations simply had this exact same cosmic story explained from their own unique cultural points of view. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The same overarching narrative endlessly repeats throughout the universe. I suppose that shouldn't be too shocking. When you observe the universe itself, it is entirely formed of repeating patterns and cycles. Some repeat rapidly, others less frequently, but if you uncover one myth, you can be absolutely sure you will find another just like it, from a different culture, at a different time, yet carrying the exact same plot. At first, this completely surprised me. But over time, I began to truly understand. The wisdom I learned from spiritual teachers years ago, that there are as many paths to God as there are people on earth, finally solidified for me. It is undeniably true. We have been given the immense gift of finding the specific path that feels right for us, without being entirely disconnected from everyone else. At the end of the day, we are truly all walking the exact same road. Some just know it and work on it consciously, while others remain unaware but still progress, just at a much slower pace. With this in mind, it doesn't really matter if you are a Christian, a Gnostic, a seeker who is spiritual but not religious, or on any other path. You can be completely assured that at some point, you will have to look the topic of sin dead in the eye. It is entirely your choice how you handle it, what meaning you apply to it, and what role you allow it to play in your life. What actually is sin? I remember frantically looking this up during my early Christian days. I wanted to understand what it truly meant to sin. I watched a pastor I deeply trusted, and he explained that sin was simply missing the mark. Honestly, that explanation felt way too broad. I walked away from it completely empty-handed, still not understanding the core mechanic. Sure, I had a Bible that handed down strict rules over and over about what to do, but it never explained what actual sin felt like or was. Maybe my mind simply overprocesses things, because I began to view sin as a trap that could catch you at any given millisecond. How could you ever avoid it? For example, imagine you are walking down the street. You aren't looking down at the pavement, you're looking straight ahead, like normal. Out of nowhere, you step on an ant. At that exact micro-moment, you have to ask yourself, have I just harmed another living thing? While looking at life through this lens might seem completely absurd to most people, I can promise you I have witnessed individuals who carefully monitor every single step they take to avoid harming a bug, purely out of a paralyzing fear of committing a sin. When I first learned about that hyper-vigilant approach, I found it extremely difficult to wrap my mind around. I mean, are we even allowed to breathe? When you start down the path of absolute perfectionism, there is no finish line. Perfection is completely unobtainable. If it were reachable, it would no longer be perfection. Let's face reality. Our world is not perfect, and it was never designed to be. There is zero growth in a state of absolute perfection. There is no forward momentum when things are already flawlessly completed. We are here on this earth to grow, and to achieve that growth, perfection is the sacrifice we must make. For me, one thing became blatantly obvious. I, along with every other human being alive, commit sin. There, I said it. I openly admit that I am not perfect. Somehow, just saying those words out loud makes you feel instantly better. The suffocating weight of pretending to be ideal and flawless completely vanishes, leaving you space to finally breathe. When you step back and look at the world from a much wider vantage point, this basic act of acknowledging our raw human nature is the exact key that allows us to find our true nature. If we refuse to acknowledge this fact, we cast false illusions. We pretend to be something we are not, and keeping up that charade is utterly exhausting. Most importantly, it isn't even necessary. The neighbor I spent years pretending to be perfect around would much rather have the real, unvarnished me to chat with. Maybe then I could actually understand her struggles, instead of constantly projecting a perfected state that makes her feel entirely isolated in what she is going through, all while I am secretly battling the exact same demons behind closed doors. That right there is exactly how we end up faking our way through existence. We take the raw truth of who we are and lock it away in private, hidden from the rest of the world. I think deep down, the root cause of why we hide comes right back to sin. It stems from our complete inability to accept our own nature. Instead, we feel an overwhelming need to hide our flaws from others out of sheer terror of what they will think of us. How will they judge us? Will they still love and accept us if they knew the exact things we have done? Would they look at us differently? And most importantly, how will we look at ourselves in the mirror after admitting to our own consciousness who we actually are? You will be incredibly happy to know that at the end of this heavy road, there is a definitive solution for sin. Unfortunately, it is not as simple as just believing in Jesus. How I deeply wish that were the case. But I can personally confirm from my own crossing over that when you reach the end of the line with Jesus, you are still held fully responsible for your own sins. Because of that, it is absolutely critical for you to handle this data the right way and free yourself. The profound sense of liberation you will find at the end cannot be explained in human words. You will be free in a way you currently cannot comprehend. So, how do you reach this state of liberation? How do you actually have your sins washed away, and what does that even mean? Do you magically stop sinning and suddenly become a perfected saint? The answer is a resounding no. You do not stop sinning. Instead, you begin to view the concept of sin through a completely rewritten perspective, and because your viewpoint shifts, it is no longer a dominant force in your life. It doesn't matter if you are a Christian, a Gnostic, a Hindu, or a follower of Islam, sin is a universal mechanic. The teachings I am about to share with you will permanently rewrite who you are if you choose to invest yourself in the practice. First, you must understand how to actually dissolve sin. I am not talking about treating your mistakes as isolated events, like when you were a small child and stole a candy bar. What I am about to share with you will not just patch over a single mistake, it will completely remove the very concept of sin from your reality. Every individual deals with this burden regardless of their titles. What I am going to show you is how to handle it in the correct way, a way that actively nurtures your spiritual growth, expands your capacity for self-love unlike anything you've ever known, and hands you far more than just a clean slate. Keep in mind, anytime you undertake these deep practices, you are actively generating your spiritual money. If you didn't know it yet, spiritual currency is a real, tangible asset. It is the literal currency of the divine storefronts. It functions identically to a 3D job in the physical world where you clock in every single week to receive numbers in your bank account. When you spend dedicated time actively working on your internal spirituality, you are generating a divine currency that will be extremely helpful in your life, and you will be able to spend it freely as you wish. There really is no greater investment a person can make than to invest in themselves by spending the necessary time to work through the heavy baggage of their past. Which brings me directly to the first phase of what it means to live a life untouched by sin. The first step is shadow work. If you come from a highly religious background like Christianity, that word might instantly trigger a fear of darkness. But shadow work is actually just an esoteric term for total self-acceptance. Another way to say it is to find yourself. Another way would be to know yourself, understand yourself, and love yourself. All of these phrases describe the profound aftermath of shadow work, but they don't capture the actual, raw process itself. The actual process of shadow work can be summarized as brutally accepting the exact parts of yourself you currently deem completely unacceptable. It means looking directly at the pieces of your history that you don't dare tell your friends about. It's dropping the illusion you project to your neighbor while your life is quietly screaming for balance. It means facing the thoughts you struggle to admit even to your own conscious mind. There are hidden chambers in all of us that are so intensely personal, deep, and vulnerable that we do not let anyone near them, including our own selves. As a direct result, we shy away from going internal to figure it out. We suppress the memory, filing it deep away into the dark basements of our psyche, foolishly thinking that if we don't talk about it, think about it, or bring it up, it will somehow magically vanish. Shadow work permanently remedies this avoidance by handing clear, structured tools to those who are finally ready to face themselves. It provides a map to navigate the delicate, treacherous landscape of your own soul. Shadow work requires you to travel backward in time, going as young as your memory will allow, forcing you to look directly at the most difficult eras of your life. The ultimate goal of this journey is to realize that at certain points in your past, just like every other human being to ever exist, you experienced raw trauma, intense fear, a total lack of security, a lack of understanding, or deep loneliness. At the exact moments those events took place, you were not as mature or as wise as you are sitting here today. You simply did not possess the psychological tools to handle the situation as smoothly as you could handle it if it happened to you right now. How often do we look back and say, "How I wish I could redo the past," or, "I wish I could apply the wisdom I have today to the mistakes of my youth." With shadow work, you can do precisely that. You can consciously take your current level of high awareness, your deep understanding, and your desire for change, and literally alter your internal response to the events that happened in your past. The moment you consciously change your understanding of a past event, your entire physical life starts radically rearranging itself around you. The other massive branch of shadow work is the art of knowing the real self. This is accomplished by looking at yourself with uncompromised, radical honesty. Not the polished avatar you show to the public, and not even the version you present to those closest to you, but the raw you that you barely look at yourself. This process involves hunting down the exact parts of your nature that you previously rejected and cast out. It means understanding that even though you hate these pieces, they are still fundamentally you. It requires being completely open to hearing what these rejected parts have to say, acknowledging that this is your face and not another's, taking absolute, unwavering responsibility for those actions, and lastly, integrating those exiled fragments back into your whole self. Shamans traditionally call this ancient process soul retrieval. Modern psychology calls it shadow work. Both frameworks are describing the exact same energetic mechanic, recovering the vital parts of our own identity that were previously cast out, shamed, hidden, or judged. If you are looking for a state of freedom that actually lasts, the kind of freedom that is not dependent on a religious doctrine or waiting around for an external entity to swoop down and save the day, shadow work is your absolute answer. It is the single most critical step a human being can take on their spiritual journey, and it is the exact key that leads to permanent freedom from the concept of sin forever. Shadow work will heal you. And I don't mean a superficial physical healing, like making a sore knee feel slightly better. It does something infinitely greater. It heals your heart and mends your broken soul from the inside out, so that your physical body can finally stop screaming in pain. Shadow work restores your template. Shadow work sets you free. If you are ready to stop running from your past, step into your own conscious driver's seat, and learn the exact step-by-step mechanics to begin this process today, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. I break down the practical exercises to initiate your first soul retrieval safely. Click it, step out of the illusion, and I will see you there.